I want to get a little bit geeky with you this morning. I'm going to apologize in advance for those of you who have absolutely no interest in this. But I want to take you behind the scenes for how we do our live streaming to show you where we've been, where we are now, where we hope to go, and also how you can help us to get there. A few years back, I wanted to begin live streaming. But there were a few obstacles, and the main obstacle that we had in live streaming our full worship service was we that did not have a good mix of all of the sound of the congregation, of the singers and the instruments. So we compromised, and the solution we came up with was to stream simply the sermon. I bought a camera that was called a Mevo. And this is a wireless camera. It was small, unobtrusive. You might have seen it over the course of several months that we used this Mevo. It streamed wirelessly to an iPad that then put the signal out to Facebook. We used this Mevo for about 2 years. The very first week that we streamed the sermon, I remember I received an email from a lady who had somehow found our church on Facebook. And she shared with me that her husband was ill and they were unable to attend church on that particular Sunday, but they were able to watch the sermon here at Good Shepherd. And she was so grateful for that they could share that experience together with us, even though they were in some faraway place. So again, we streamed for 2 years using the Mevo, and then COVID-19, the pandemic, hit. And all of a sudden, the idea of streaming, which was an afterthought, it became the primary way in which we were going to engage as a congregation together in worship. And I'm grateful that we had some experience before that. We were not starting from scratch like many of our sister congregations that had never streamed before. They didn't even know where to begin. But we had a starting point. And it's difficult. It's difficult to do live worship. So a decision was made early on that we wouldn't have a live service per se, but that we would record a service. We would edit that service and then stream that service on Sunday morning as if it was live. This is a lot like how late night television is done. That show is recorded earlier on in the day, but then is broadcast later at night as if it was live. Now, we didn't necessarily have all the equipment that we needed to do it well. We used what we had. We used things like, this, an iPhone. I had an iPad that I used, and we used the Mevo to record the service, and then we would edit it later before broadcasting it. But very early on, I came to the realization that as I looked at the different recordings of the iPhone, of the Mevo, and the iPad, that the Mevo suffered in terms of quality. It wasn't the greatest camera. It was great for what it did, but it was not going to be a great solution for recording our services. So we used a number of iPhones and iPads to record the service. And I remembered that I had some nice Canon lenses. So I bought a nice Canon mirrorless camera, which I could make use of some of those lenses. And actually, I'm filming right now on that Canon camera with a Canon Sigma lens that I'm recording this right now, this video that you are watching. And so we did this for several weeks, and we developed a routine of recording, of editing, and then streaming that service. And then we were getting very comfortable with all of that, and Governor Murphy announced that, churches could go back with certain restrictions back to live and in-person worship. And as excited as I was about the prospect of worshiping once again together, there was a part of me that was panicked. Because as I said, it's one thing to do a pre-recorded service. It's another thing to do live video. There's a lot that can go wrong with live video. And again, we didn't necessarily have all the equipment that we needed. We figured out a plan to use what we had, but we still don't necessarily have all of the right equipment to do this the right way. I wanted to serve those who are at home and are unable to attend worship with us for whatever reason. And some people can't be here yet because of compromised immune systems. And still, I wanted to be able to serve those who wanted to be here in person. We took a few weeks. We didn't go back the very first week. Some congregations in New Jersey went back the very first week that they could go back. We went back about 2 weeks later because we wanted to figure out how to do this right and also reopen in a responsible way. We took the iPhones that we were recording the pre-recorded service with, and I also bought what was called a Sling Studio. The Sling Studio, think of it as a Wi-Fi hotspot that you can connect different phones or wireless devices to, and then they can broadcast their video signal to that Sling Studio, which then puts the signal out to Facebook or on YouTube. And thank you, Martha. Martha's been the one who has been operating that over these last few weeks. But there's a lot that is to be desired about this setup. First of all, phones are phones, and phones tend to receive phone calls. I mean, we put our phones in do not disturb mode, but nevertheless, your do not disturb mode is overridden when you receive multiple calls from the same person. And on one particular Sunday morning, Old Bridge Schools decided to put out a pre-recorded message to all the families. And because I have multiple kids, I received multiple phone calls. And right then, during the middle of my sermon, my phone was interrupted and the signal was lost for a few moments. The other thing that's difficult about these phones is that they don't have any zoom. So we need to set them up very close to the subjects that are being filmed, which means they stand between those who are worshiping in person and those who might be up front speaking. It's not the most ideal solution in that regards. Another challenge that we face in regards to the live worship, it's one thing to put lyrics up on the screen in post-production. You record the video and then you add the graphics later as you're editing the video. It's another thing to put those lyrics, those graphics up on the screen on the fly in the middle of worship. And so I want to thank Mary Ann, I want to thank Jason, I want to thank Justin for their assistance in helping Martha with the live stream and helping to get those lyrics up on not only onto the video screens that are behind me right now, but also to get those lyrics out onto the live stream. Someone took notice that we didn't have everything that we really needed here. In fact, probably a lot of you have taken notice of that. And they came to me and said that they wanted to make a generous donation to help us get that which was most needed. And as much as I would have liked to say, cameras, we need new cameras, the thing that we needed most was better sound. We were using an old soundboard that was prone to user error. And the thing is that you can watch video that is of inconsistent quality as long as you have good audio. If the video does not have good audio, you're probably going to turn that video off. And so I told this person that the thing we need most is a new soundboard. And they are very generous and made a $4,000 donation that we could purchase this nice, beautiful, new mixer. And I pray over the last few weeks that you have noticed an improvement in the sound quality and consistency. You know, there's still some hiccups because we're still learning how to use this thing. There's a lot to learn, and we don't have it all down yet, but pray that each week it gets better and better. But where that leaves us is that we're still using these iPhones to film our Sunday morning worship, which is not the best solution. And so what I would like to do is I would like to purchase 3 cameras. 2 cameras are called PTZ cameras. You may ask, well, what's a PTZ camera? PTZ, it stands for pan, tilt, and zoom. Pan, tilt, and zoom. This is a camera that would be mounted on the back wall of our sanctuary and would be remotely controlled. The person controlling it could zoom it in, could rotate it, do all sorts of different things with it. And it can be pre-programmed to different times in the service. For example, I typically stand in the same place when I am preaching, so it could be programmed to be zoomed into that location. Typically for communion and for the prayers, I stand behind the altar, and it can be zoomed into that place and pre-programmed to zoom in right there for that time of the service. One thing that it also does with a camera that's on a tripod here in front like an iPhone, you can't pan, tilt, and move that phone, so it's stationary. Now a phone or the PTZ camera can be rotated during a song, for example, and put onto the praise team, so you can have not only one camera angle on the praise team, but have multiple camera angles on the praise team when your cameras can be moved during the service. Another camera that I'd like to buy is a traditional camera, a video camera that you probably are thinking of or have an image of in your mind when I talk about a video camera. This would be a more traditional video camera that could be moved around the sanctuary depending upon what we have going on a given Sunday. Another thing that we would like to get is a video switcher. Think of this much like a keyboard that has buttons on it. If we have 4 cameras that are operating on a given Sunday, you might have 4 buttons on that video switcher, and the person who's controlling the feed would simply press the button for the appropriate video angle for the appropriate time. Now, with what we're doing with the Sling Studio, they have to use a mouse on a computer screen and drag the mouse and then click on the angle that they want. And then when it's time to change the video angle again, they drag the mouse and they click on it. It's a lot different than just press a button, and you are done. It's much simpler for our volunteers and for our users. So how much would these things cost? The tip of the iceberg. To begin with, the startup cost is about $3,000. And ideally, that second camera, the traditional camera, I would like to get an entry-level professional camera, which increases that starting price to over $4,000. With all of that said, we'd like to make an appeal to ask you to be generous, to help us get off the ground here. Keep in mind that this is just the beginning, that there is more to do, that we have issues with lighting. We're currently using lights on stands in the sanctuary, and we'd like to overhaul the entire lighting of our sanctuary, and we're going to bring a consultant in to take a look at that in terms of what we could do different. But $3,000 is the minimum starting cost to get started with these improvements that we would like to make. And we'd like to appeal to your generosity, especially those of you who are watching online and taking advantage of this live feed. Now, what we don't want you to do is to take what you are already giving as part of your tithe and to just simply designate a portion of that to this special project. That doesn't get us anywhere. That's robbing Peter to pay Paul. We still got to pay our salaries. We still got to keep the lights on here in this building. But what we ask is a gift over and above what you might normally give to help make this happen. A second thing that we want to ask today is that you might consider serving in this ministry. You see, it would be great to have all of this equipment, but if we don't have anyone to run it, well, then we're no better off. And what our desire is to have people more than just simply show up to press a few buttons and to run this equipment, but to have those who would be willing to invest, those who would be willing to really learn the ins and outs of this equipment, to help us learn it together, and also to come up with solutions to help us better proclaim the gospel to the world beyond, which is so very important right now in a time where so many people are filled with anxiety. The gospel message is needed more than ever before. And we want to help you live out your full potential. You never know what your gifts and your passions may be unless you try new things. The last thing I want to say here in the midst of all of this, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Good Shepherd, for your support through all of this, that we could not have done or do what we do without your generosity, without your financial support, and without also the support of the time that you give and the talents that you share with us. So thank you, Good Shepherd, that even through this difficult time, this time of pandemic, that God has, in many ways, prospered our church and enabled us to reach those that prior to this, we were not able to reach. So thank you for indulging me. As I said, this makes me giddy talking about all of this. And I pray that as we worship together today, making use of all of this technology, that God would bless it and prosper it. Hey, goodbye.